Welcome to Studio 58A Live here at the Jamaica Information Service, our discussion program coming to you live on Facebook. I am your host, Vaughn Davis. Thank you to everyone joining us online wherever you are around the world. We really do appreciate it. Thank you very much for your eyes. And as you watch, remember to send in your questions and your comments so we can put them to our guest. And like how we have your attention, do us a favor now, the same favor we always ask. Just share this video with a friend or 2 or 500 so we can have a very lively discussion. Now, every September in Jamaica, there's only one big ticket item on the agenda in virtually every household: back to school. The time when parents stress over school fees and school supplies and making sure the children get off to a good start for the new academic year. But children stress at this time of the year too. For many, it's the first time they will be leaving the comfort of their homes and the company of their parents to go in a completely new environment with new faces and things to get adjusted to. Some are leaving one school and going to another school and don't know what to expect and are unsure about the new kinds of work they will be exposed to. And then you have some children who are just stressed about school in general. You know, as parents, it's our job to help them make an easy transition into school so they can be successful. But since the children don't come with a how-to guide or a manual, most of the time we need a little guidance, you know what I mean? So here today to provide some guidance for helping our children to go through this back to school period is Chief Executive Officer of the National Parenting Support Commission, Ms. Kaysia Kerr. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, Ms. Kerr. So first of all, for persons who might not be too familiar with that organization, what exactly does the National Parenting Support Commission do?
Thank you. The National Parenting Support Commission, based on an Act of Parliament, that's the NPSC Act 2012, is mandated to coordinate the supports for parents right across Jamaica. We came about because of gaps that were found in the education system coming out of the Task Force report of 2004. And so we're one of those new entities that was created under transformation. We're one of 6 new agencies. So essentially we're part of the school improvement framework that really supports parents to ensure there's parental involvement in schools. And so we coordinate supports around that. What do parents need to ensure that there's good participation from them as it relates to their child's education?
All right, so back to school, like I said, it's the big ticket item every September. So as a parent, where do we start? Like I said, when the children come out, we don't get the how-to guide or the manual to say, all right, do this and do that to make sure that they will make an easy transition back into school. So where do we start to make sure that when they get there, they can manage and start navigating the space in a comfortable way?
Well, you started off very well. Every September, certainly in Jamaica, people have the heebie-jeebies about back to school. But since we know that, there are some things we ought to be doing way before we actually get to September. So if you're planning for September in September, you're late.
Right.
We expect that the back to school planning should be before, at least a month, I would suggest, before. So one of the things you get early for those children who are, for example, transitioning to high school, or the babies who are going to a new school for the first time, it is good to introduce the children to the campus, the school, before September. They need to get a feel of where their classrooms will be. They need to meet some of the teachers because many teachers are on site during the break. Teachers will tell you that it's not a real holiday because some of them are busy getting to know their students. I know there are teachers who actually try to work with the administration to look at pictures and try to match pictures to name to learn who the children are that they're getting. There are teachers who actually do that. And there are things they're tidying up. Some are writing letter plans. Some are fixing up the classrooms. And so teachers are available. So it would be good for them to go to the school to get a feel of the campus, meet some of the teachers, and also to hear what the expectations are of the school from early. Some schools have programs. And so if over the break, and when we say the break, we're talking about July, August, they can enroll into some of those programs. It also helps to ease them into the new environment come September. So those are some of the little things you can do to prepare. There are other things too that we don't talk about enough, like doing the medical.
Okay, yeah.
Yes. Because you really want your children to start September in good health,
right,
or the best possible state. So you visit the doctor and you get the regular checkup. You want to make sure their eyes are functioning well, their ears are functioning well, all the
Definitely.
vitals are vital checks are done. And so when you get the medical done, you're in a position to make important decisions. I know, having been a classroom teacher, that many children come to school and they have vision problems, but you don't know because that check was not done, that screening was not done.
Hearing
And
problems
so,
as well.
and hearing issues as well. And so you think they are not getting correct grades because there's some cognitive deficit. They're understanding really well. But what they're seeing on the board and what they're reproducing on their paper are two different things. There's no alignment in terms of what you expect them to write because they're not seeing properly or they're not hearing very well. So it's very important that a medical is done so that we know that children are in the best health and they're getting whatever it is they need to ensure that they can learn well.
All right. And then naturally, for me, well, I remember when I was going to, I guess let me skip to high school. I remember when I was going, first day of school, father just dropped me off at the gate and pushed me through the gate. It was my responsibility to basically find my class and take myself to where I needed to be. And I was kind of, a little bit of an adjustment to me. And
Yes.
kind of frightened.
Yes.
But no, at the same time, I feel like you have to strike this balance between being overprotective, being there but without being overprotective. How do you, because I mean, your child going down new environment, if you're one of those helicopter parents, you might feel that
Yes.
way for just let them go. But how do you balance that, help them to balance that as a parent?
Many parents find this a difficulty because as a parent, your natural instinct is to protect. You feel as if you have to ensure that your child is safe. And safety looks very differently now than a few years ago, certainly. So I can imagine for those parents who are overprotective, it is difficult. And it's difficult for the child too, who wants to establish some amount of independence and say, I have this. You've taught me enough. Now allow me to navigate based on what you've taught me. It's very difficult. But there has to be a conversation between the child and the parent, because when you have the conversation, when you probe, when you question, then you get an opportunity to examine how much they know, how much they recall from what you would have taught them about safety. And then you will know how much you can allow them to navigate the situations or when to actually step in to help them, to offer guidance. So as difficult as it is, you are never going to be there for 24 hours. And children spend most of their day at school anyhow. So that is certainly out of your control. You have to trust, continue to offer guidance, but also give them an opportunity to demonstrate that, look, I really listened and I have learned and our values remain intact. And yes, even though by the time you get to adolescence, it is not the parent who is the influencer. It is really the peer.
Peers and so on, people
but you
around
would
them.
have, absolutely, but you'd have taught them to select peers that mirror the values at home. And so you have to reinforce, continue to say what the value systems are, what your expectations are, but still give them enough room to demonstrate.
Yeah, wait. No.
Easier said than done.
Yeah,
but it takes practice and conversation, ongoing dialogue.
I mean, especially, I feel like things have changed so much, bro, from when you and I perhaps were children in terms
Certainly,
of
I don't know about you, but certainly me.
the distractions and the challenges that you're going to face, because it almost seems like the threats are, well, maybe threats might be a little too strong a word, but the influences that they'll be under are a little more strong nowadays. Compared to a couple of years ago, even so many,
Yeah, well, certainly, because in the 80s when I was in high school, for example, that was when the internet was just coming on. So many persons still didn't have access. No, it's just a click away. Everybody has access. So even to think about everything, all the information that our children are exposed to. Certainly, when I needed information, I had to physically go into a library at that time. Books were always at home, so I had that too. But I didn't have information at my fingertips the way our children have now. So things have definitely changed. And because there is so much information, the filters have to be on, because not everything that you access is wholesome, is good, is the kind of information we want you to have. It's not going to help you. So that is why people are so scared, because there's just so much out there now that our children have access to.
Let me ask you this. Now, we know that, for example, PEP, formerly GSAT, and so on. So you might have a situation where a child passes for school wasn't necessarily the first, second, maybe even the third choice. And you have a situation where the child is going to school now, and as a parent or as a child, you might not necessarily feel like you're going into the right, you're not going where you want to go, basically. And so now, on top of, I guess, that disappointment, you're going to a new school. You didn't necessarily want to go there. And so now, I guess maybe for both parent and child, there might be some anxiety over that. So how do you help them to navigate that kind of situation? I suppose even when you as a parent might not be too happy with what's going on.
Right. And that's a reality, that there are many children and parents who are disappointed. So let me go back to even, as you mentioned, GSAT. There are many parents from public and private schools who would have had GSAT down to a science. They knew exactly what to SWAT and what the children needed to regurgitate. Here it is, the Ministry of Education came in with PEP, and they feel as if, boy, the ministry has pulled the rug from under me because I had this thing down pat.
Exactly.
And your child might not have been placed at the school of choice, which I always struggle with saying that, because truth be told, all our schools should be the school of choice.
Right.
All right? But there are some things that I would recommend. I believe that from every institution out there are persons who have gone there and done very well and are contributing to society in very good ways. It helps when you can find those models and say, but this person went to that school. It was in one of the celebrated 35 or 32 traditional high schools. But look at what this person has managed to accomplish. And if this person could go to this school and do well, I suggest that you could go and do well, because the truth be told, it is not where you go, really. It's how much you're willing to put in and the support that parents give along that journey. I want to assure persons too that we have good teachers throughout the system.
Right.
In fact, I might say something a little controversial. It won't be the first time, but I do know that there are many teachers who apply way more effort because of where the levels at which the children enter school.
So based on, they have to put a little
so
bit
you have
more
to put out
out
so much
to get more out of the students.
So you have teachers who really, I like to say, get down and dirty. They get into it. They pull out all the strategies. They're really planning lessons with that particular child in mind, because this child needs a little more help and this child learns a different kind of way. And because of that, it's amazing how those children are able to achieve. Now, one of the things we don't talk about enough too is the fact that we meet children where they come in.
Right.
So we have our expectations of the children, yes, but not to the point where it makes us not be intentional about our planning. You do have teachers who are willing to meet the children where they are. And because of that, you'll find that even though you did not go to your school of choice because there might have been some deficit, then the teachers are willing to work with you where you are, to build on the knowledge you have, and then to get you to where you really need to be.
Right.
So the results might not be at the end of 5 years, 10 CXCs or the celebrated 13, but it could be 4 and 5. And when you came in, you might have had deficits. I believe that's enough to celebrate.
Yeah, it is. I just want to show some love to persons tuning in online. Big shout out to Kaysia Kerr. She says, always love to watch the informative discussion on here. Thank you, Kaysia. We really appreciate that.
And if that's my relative.
It probably is. So we have another lady, Georgetta Blake. She says, hi, Miss Kerr, my senior from Westwood Days. So she's showing you some love.
Yes, nice.
All right.
Westwood sitting there on the hilltop.
All right, there you go. And Georgetta is saying, true, my back to school planning actually starts at the close of school, taking the uniform to the dressmaker early. She's also saying guilty, medical not done yet. Georgetta, you need to sort that out. Come on. As a Westwood girl, I'm sure you're on top of things like that. So, get that done. All right, now, Miss Kerr, in terms of back to school anxiety, how do we help? I guess both parents and children will deal with that, because, children in particular more so than others, especially where they might be leaving from one school to another, or if they just generally don't like school, which is much more common than people like to think. You know what I mean? So how do we help them to understand that this is a necessary part of their growth and development, so that even if they might feel a little anxious, they have to just push through and just go through this process?
Yeah, and it helps to know that there are other children too who who are feeling the same anxieties that you're feeling now. It helps to also know that people have been through it. People have been exactly in the same space where you are, and they went through it, and it's not that they're more resilient than you are. And if they did it, you can do it too. But in terms of the general heebie-jeebies, it's very important that parents don't pass those on to their children. Man, that is almost becoming cliche. I hear myself saying it so much, because sometimes the children were fine.
Yeah.
And having just listened and talked to the parents, they're now so anxious and they get a little turned off. Sometimes too, it's because of other experiences, the experiences they had at their previous school, that they're just carrying those experiences to this new space. It's important that you open yourselves up and just tell yourself it's a new situation, new environment, new day, different people, and give yourself a chance. Open yourself up to that new experience. I don't know about anybody else, but I actually like diversity. I like differences. I like different environments. And I'm really one of those persons who truly likes changes. And so because of that, I tend to have an open mind about situations. So then it would be good for our children to know that even though they might have had an experience before that was not so good, it doesn't mean that the experience you're going to have will be the same. So just open yourselves up. Find other children who will be going to the school as well.
Definitely.
And start creating those networks and read up. Try and get as much information about the school. Talk about the co-curricular programs and see if they're ones that you're interested in. And just start getting yourself in that mode. Create a little buzz for yourself and get yourself excited. Give yourself pep talks.
Yeah, there you have it, guys. You have to really start making the effort to get into the school vibe so you can start having a good experience. You know what I mean? And it takes the parents to play a role in that as well.
Absolutely.
Now, we know that, in theory, everybody knows that you should build a good relationship with your teacher and with the school and the principal. But in practice, what really happens is you push the child through the door and you drive off and you leave. And you might see the child, you might see the teacher when report time comes, or maybe if you attend a PT or graduation, something like that. We get busy. That's what happens. You know what I mean? So how really, practically speaking, what are some ways in which, without feeling like you're overextending yourself as a parent, you can go and build that relationship that is beneficial for you and your child?
Well, I'm yet to meet a parent who doesn't want the best for his or her child. Now, whether or not the practices align with what your wants are, that's a whole different story. But I'm yet to meet a parent who does not want the best. And so we have to go back to that institutional principle that says, when you partner with the school, my child does better. When I partner with the school, all the outcomes I expect are better guaranteed. So if you remember that if my child sees me showing interest, the child is going to likely do better. He's going to think twice when he's going to perhaps find friends whose values contradict the values at home. He's going to think twice about being a truant, dodging classes. He's going to think twice about any antisocial behavior that he wants to exhibit or she wants to exhibit in class, because mommy is going to be right there and talking to the teacher. So when you think of all those things, it encourages you a little more, gives you the impetus to get a little more involved. So I think we need to go back to that listen, we have 30 years of research that says the same thing. When the parent partners with the teacher, the child does better. It's irrefutable at this point. So with that in mind, we still encourage parents, as busy as you are. Sometimes the engagement does not have to be in person. You don't need to go on the school compound.
That's what I'm talking about. Because some people just feel like, look, when you live, for example, your child's school is in a location that's maybe a little distance away from, and it's a challenge to get there and get back and get to
traffic.
Work and so on, right? Yeah. So it almost seems sometimes like it is really an obstacle. You know what I mean? So for parents, like practical tips and suggestions that you can feel, okay, yeah, we know in principle we should be doing this, but we're tired. So how do we navigate this?
So try and collect numbers. There are teachers who are willing to give their cell phone numbers and their Facebook handles and the other social media handles, and give them and WhatsApp messages. There are WhatsApp groups that are very efficient. So you don't always have to be on the compound to be involved. School involvement is not limited to PTA meetings and report day, and of course the graduation and the
Right,
fandangos 5 years later.
right.
There are things that you can do to stay in touch so that you're fully abreast of what's happening and you can offer guidance and support when necessary.
Now, let me ask you this. In terms of, you might find, for example, that you have a situation in school. Let's say, for example, your child gets into, a little negative situation, has to be punished, that kind of thing. And, we've heard the stories where parents get, once again, I guess, going back to that overprotective kind of feeling. Finding the balance between allowing your child to understand that they need to be disciplined and learn discipline, but even if, for example, you might feel like it's excessive as a parent, But how do you help to navigate that? Maybe I'm not saying it the right way, but you have a situation where your child does something, needs to be disciplined. The school might feel like you might feel like the school is coming a little too hard on your child, for example, suspension, detention, whatever the case may be. So, as a parent, what advice do you have, or from where you sit, what advice do you have for parents to help them understand and, I suppose, get over those kind of feelings?
Oh boy, there's so many things that jumped out at me. I hope I remember it all to say. So there are times when children have propensities to behave in particular ways because of some other things that are happening with those children, whether it is a behavioral disorder, or it could be a part of another disability that they have. And that is why it's very important to meet teachers early so that you too can have conversations about who your child is. So sometimes teachers misinterpret a behavior as one that is done intentionally antisocial when really it is coming from something else. There's some antecedent for that behavior. And that is why that conversation is important. There must also, before a child is even suspended or any punishment that might seem grave, there has to be intervention at different intervals. And we would hope that the school would contact the parent from day one to say, these are the challenges that I'm having with your child. Because it shouldn't be that it's when it gets to a point of suspension, that the parent is now being advised to say they think that this is harsh. You would have had to show that these were the measures that we tried with your child and they just have not worked, and this is how we got to here. But in any case, let us say that, okay, all things equal, the child behaved in a particular way and the teacher administered a reward that the parent found that was too harsh. Don't like the word punishment. Negative reward, yes. That don't like the word punishment.
Don't like the word punishment.
No.
I feel all right.
We'll have a talk.
Okay with
we'll have
word.
A talk off air about that one.
No problem.
But a negative reward. I think there needs to be a conversation. I think it's okay for a parent to voice that opinion, and for the school to also be very clear about what its rules are. And that is why orientation is also important, because it gives you an opportunity to see the school's handbook, to hear the classroom expectations. Each teacher is different. There are some teachers who you could do particular behaviors, and I won't say get away with it, but they would be maybe a little more tolerant.
Right.
And there are some teachers, depending on how they see their class and how it's supposed to be organized, those would not be tolerated. So it's very important that you get to school and you understand what the classroom ethos and the general school ethos is, so that you don't get into those situations. But you could talk about it because schools can be very reasonable. Teachers can be reasonable people. And once they see you involved and interested too, it makes it easier. I think it's harder when you're an uninvolved parent and you only come because you think. But
you
if
get to the stage where it's punishment.
Absolutely, you're going to come. Right. Terrible rewards. And one of the reasons I push for positive discipline, because discipline is really structure.
What do you mean by positive discipline? People would think that's almost an oxymoron.
Well, it does sound like an oxymoron, yes, but there are ways to put structures in place on the positive so that children know what is expected of them without any negative connotations. I'll give you a simple example. Instead of saying, do not put your bags on the floor, it is better to say, place your bags in the corner to the right.
Okay.
It takes the negativity out of it. For some people, if you're wired kind of like me, whereas I was not a bad student or a bad child, there's something, when you tell a child he can't, it's almost like curiosity.
You give him a challenge.
Like
you give him a challenge.
like you become curious. So why mustn't I go over there? Let me go test for myself as to why. But if you say place your bags, and generally speaking, we like to tell children what not to do rather than telling them what to do.
What is acceptable.
What is acceptable. Yeah, absolutely. And that causes frustration, and it causes different ambiguities because different people will interpret what you say in different ways. When you put it on the positive, everybody is clear.
Yeah.
You can go outside once you finish your homework. It's different than you will not go outside if your homework is not finished.
It's a challenge. Like,
you see? And also...
Some would say that's kind of like mollycoddling the children.
It also sounds like what you are talking about, punishment. And homework should be a pleasant experience. But once you say it that way, it's almost as if it becomes punishment for you to do your homework because no, I don't get to go outside because of homework.
Okay.
Whereas if you say once you finish your homework, you can go outside. It just makes it sound differently, and it's positive. And discipline is just structure, it's putting parameters in place and boundaries and guiding your children along those parameters and along those boundaries.
All right.
Right? It's not supposed to be negative.
Well, I agree with you, up to a certain point. I mean, on some level, we don't want to feel like we're mollycoddling the children.
I'll win you over after we wrap here, man.
No problem. Now, let me ask you this. In terms of setting academic goals, I mean, as a parent and you want your child to get off to a good start, you want them to appreciate that, education is important. You have to set a standard. We want good grades, we want you to do well, and etc. etc. But at the same time, as a typical Jamaican West Indian household, I was watching this video the other day, child coming with that test, say I got 81 on the test, parents say you failed the test by 19 points.
Oh my God.
And you know that this is a regular thing. We have high standards. We want the children to get all A's. We want them to do well. But setting realistic and reasonable academic goals for your children,
that
discussion.
But may I say that what really needs to be rewarded is effort and not the grade? Because I could get A's and not have tried.
Yeah, what if you're not? That means you're brilliant. As a parent, that's good.
But that's not necessarily good because there's also the brilliant and underachiever. Yes, that you really could be accelerated, but because you're so grade oriented, you're just doing it for doing it, so you're really not learning anything.
But I mean, we're conditioned to think But that's what is the tester? What is the I guess the litmus test for whether you're doing well at school is, are you getting good grades?
For me, certainly.
Effort. But that's gonna take that you just presented something that is contrary to so much that we think. Yes, but do you know
in one of my English literature classes, at the beginning, before we even opened a Shakespeare book, everybody got A's.
For doing what exactly?
Nothing at all. Because since we're so goal-oriented and since everybody has these anxieties about grades, let's give everybody A's. Now come. Now what?
But then isn't that like, certificates for participation? Like, sure, you showed up and participated and then you get a good grade.
The point was to get all this anxiety and get the stress off about grades. What I really want students to do is to apply effort. And really, that is something that perhaps takes a bigger conversation because there are some children who will never make the A.
Which is fair, that is true.
Let's face it.
But
hold on, but they are putting out so much effort. And you can see where they are learning, maybe not making big leaps, but incrementally. Yes? And there are children who are making A's all the time and they're not putting out one effort at all. It's one of the reasons at one particular school, I ensured my grade 8 and 9 children did CXCs because some needed to be accelerated.
No.
That was the only way to ensure that they were applying effort.
But it begs the question for me then, if I see you putting out all this effort and you're still not getting any good grades, then where does that leave me? You know what I mean? If as a parent I see you putting out effort, but I mean, as much as I want to reward effort, but if you don't pass, for example, CXC with a 1 or 2 or a 3, then that means you haven't passed the subject.
But as a parent, that's very informative, and that's good for me to know, because it gives me an opportunity, empowers me now to go and find out what is hindering my child from attending to education the way I think is normal. Mm-hmm. So if after all of that he's still not making the grades, mm-hmm. right, then we need to do some screening to find out what is the inhibitor, what is preventing my child from getting the desired results. And this is very good for parents, mm-hmm. because once you can find that, then we can start unlocking the mystery, and we can start applying the strategies and putting in all the supportive measures to ensure the child's efforts give them the kinds of rewards that we want.
Let me take you back
I'm not even saying grades.
Let me take you back to I guess, the idea of how do you initiate that conversation, I suppose, even because it has to start when they're young. Initiate that conversation when they're small about setting. Because, I think, as them say, bend the tree from its small, and when they grow older, they won't depart from it. So when they're small, you want to condition their mind that you have to set goals in terms of education, so you can, I guess, track it on your own and know what you're putting in the effort to get the kind of reward that you want.
Yeah.
So initiating that conversation and then maintaining it as they go.
Good effort, because too, there are children who get good grades without learning concepts.
Which is true. That's fair. They might just be naturally gifted at a particular thing, and they just get good grades.
But outside of that, isn't that why we have moved from GSAT anyway? Because we're just regurgitating. We had really good memory. No. And so we know how to spit back information. Yeah. But it doesn't mean we understood the concept. And it's something I would test all the time, so everybody knows. And I still believe there is a space for rote teaching, mm-hmm. because I do think, for example, timetabling, the best way to teach timetable. I don't know if anybody's learning it that way. They're going to the calculator, right? But whatever. The best way is by rote. But if I say to you, we have 4 miles from here to wherever in Kingston. Mm-hmm. We have covered 2 miles. How many are left? And you can't tell me. It means you have not learned the concept. But you can tell me 2 and 2 are 4, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, by memory. So there's some people who would get it on the test, but the concept has not been understood. So get back to your question. How do we know from their little help them to apply effort? By rewarding effort. And mm-hmm. simple reward is praise. When they have done something and have really applied effort, you say, really, this is good. And you can say good to a point, no, let us see right here. Let us improve on right here, mm-hmm. right?
No, and then applying that to, because for me, it's important to reward effort, and but at the same time, as we say, we can't escape the fact that at the end of the day, when they leave school, it's your qualifications, like how you spent 5 years as reward. You put in lots of effort, but you had to get the ones.
You think in 2019 it's still about grades? You think people are hiring you for your grades?
Personally, no.
So.
Personally,
okay,
I think it has to do with your attitude and your aptitude, your willingness to learn and your willingness to actually
solve
go
problems.
Right.
Absolutely, because here we are in this era. It's certainly not.
Your grades get you through the door, though.
You would have.
The grades get you. When I pick up the resume, I don't necessarily want to see the person who has 4, 5, and 6. I want to see the person who has 1, because they say education means you're trainable.
All right, so the grades
the
grades get you to the door, but the grades don't keep you there.
No, they won't keep you there. We know that.
I will concede.
So we have to get them to appreciate. You have to get the piece of paper.
But you do have in some industries, though, it's not necessarily your grades, truth be told, because what we have found is that many persons are getting through the door with the grades. But having had that initial contact, they're back out through the door.
Because they don't have the soft skills, they don't have the other things that they need to have to make them
successful. They just didn't learn anything. They really didn't read for those grades.
Well, which is
you
true.
know these people
That's true.
who have all degrees. And I'm talking about, and I'm an educator, okay, and I'm saying this, but they just didn't read for it. They can't apply anything when they go on the job. They didn't read for the degree.
But no, hey, you're preaching to the controversy. We know the ins and the outs. We know how this thing works. Let me just show some love again to people online who are tuning in. Georgetta is sending in lots of comments. Appreciate that, Georgetta. Really do. She says, I'm going to ensure I'm show up more at school.
Very good,
I normally do that, but I think I can do it a little bit more. Intense contact with teachers and all. And Sharon Adamson is saying, excellent conversation. We appreciate that, Sharon. Really, really appreciate that. And Candace Christian is asking, what about morning and nighttime routine tips? I suppose, help them get that.
Absolutely.
Get that, because it's not just something that's useful for back to school. It's something that's useful throughout the academic year itself.
Well,
so how
that's
do we
what
get
discipline
them?
is, Discipline involves routines. It's a part of that structure, which is an element of effective parenting. Okay? Structure. So it's very important, too, to not wait until September to put people back in the routines. I know in many...
I always like to look at both sides. What do you do if you find your child is the bully? And what do you do if your child is being bullied? How do we react? How do we respond in a way that is not... Because, parents nowadays, it's easy to just fly off the handle and say, pick me up, etc. It's the easiest thing to do that because it's the natural protective instinct as a parent. But how do you do it in a social and a functional way?
So let's just talk about the bully first. There's the ABC of behavior. B, behavior. C, consequent. The A, we don't talk about too much, the antecedent. For the bully, there's something that's triggering that behavior because something triggers all behaviors. It could be fear. It could be that there is some kind of abuse. It could be something that's triggering that behavior. So we first need to find out why the bully is behaving the way he is. Now, anger begets anger, hurt begets hurt people hurt people, that kind of thing. So we need to find out what's triggering the behavior. And then parents in general just need to teach empathy. In fact, just yesterday we came out of a big session at work looking at Parent Month, which is November. And we're going to be talking about empathy a lot this Parent Month. You need to show the bully as a parent what the impact of his behavior on the person being bullied. Because oftentimes you're not even realizing the deep hurt that they're causing because all they're trying to do is get rid of their own hurts without realizing that the same hurt that they're feeling, that's what they're now doing to somebody else. So especially when the child is younger, it's easier at that time because children, when they're younger, really don't want to know they're hurting somebody else. And then as they get older, you get to the antecedent. If it's an older child, a lot of investigating, well, in both cases, but a lot of investigating needs to go on to find out why is this child hurting somebody else. And for the child being bullied, you have to encourage a child to speak up and speak out about it. Find a responsible adult to share what is going on. Now, if you know your parent has a propensity to knock somebody out if they think you're getting hurt, maybe you will not want to tell your parent because you don't want that kind of display at your school, and rightly so. But you could find a teacher or the guidance counselor, the dean of discipline, the principal, somebody, an aunt in your family, an uncle, somebody who is willing to listen to you about what is happening to you. And then also for you to not just speak up, but to really just articulate to what it is, how you feel. Because sometimes we deal with the physical, the hurt, but we don't deal with the psychological and emotional hurt that stems from bullying.
Now, I'm going to switch tack a little bit and take you down another road. Going back again, it says when you and I were going to school, technology was there, but it wasn't so intuitive. It wasn't so, I would even say, so much into what we were doing. Right about now, smartphones make scientific calculations like a touch of a button.
Yes.
And schools are being encouraged to do as much as possible, introduce technological aids and so on to make
technology and
education.
So
the children they're growing up, it is part and parcel of the education process. But that comes with another situation where it's so easy because the technology is so accessible, you can use it for recreation and leisure. And now as a parent, for us who might see a child growing up having access to these technological advancements, it's hard to find a dividing line between this is what is the norm now. Once upon we had to read, but we had to read physical books. But now children have tablets. And
Right.
tablets allow them to multitask and do so many things. They can read, for example, while listening to music, while doing whatever. And so striking that balance as a newbie to technology, because we know that the children are more advanced than us. They learn these things in seconds and know how to manipulate them. And as a parent, how do you advise a parent to proceed insofar as allowing your children to grow up in this age, this technological age, while at the same time appreciating that they need to have discipline and use it in the right way?
Well, it's certainly for technology is certainly a part of this era. And I would never tell a parent not to have a child have access to the technology. It's actually ridiculous if I were to say that, because it is the time, it is what they need. It's certainly a very useful tool. However, with everything, there's good and there's bad. And so we have to also talk about safety while we're using the internet, safety while we're accessing all forms of all the different devices and all the sites and so on. One of the things I know is that there are always parental controls. And so, especially for little children, we want to make sure they're using the devices in the space, in common areas. So try to put that structure in place that as soon as a child takes up the tablet or the smartphone, they come to the family space. And it's very important that parents check in, look to see what children are doing. So from time to time, look, because we have persons, all kinds of maliciousware will pop up. And there are persons who are there just in the background looking to see what engagements, what sites your children are visiting frequently. And they know how to access those sites and how to use the same technology to get children involved in situations that they're not prepared for, that could possibly harm them. And so safety is very important. We also want for older children that they listen to those persons who are very adept with technology and know all the sites. And I mean, I was talking about the dark web. And persons were saying to me, teenagers, but that's a long time ago. That's been around for so long. So they too understand they're on the cutting edge of it. So I guess it's for us parents to make sure we're getting the information so that we can guide them accordingly. There are sites they certainly need to stay away from. But then the technology also gives you autonomy to put things on, to upload videos and so on. We have heard in recent times children uploading things that have come back to embarrass them and embarrass their families in general. And, you know, the teenage years are so interesting. It's one that you're just exploding with all kinds of ideas and you want to explore them all.
Definitely.
But not all the ideas that come to you are good ones. So your filters have to be on. Your social register needs to be constantly on as well. So you must always be reflecting on those values and attitudes that your parents taught you. And the school itself reinforces. So it's very important that they think about the videos, because the thing about it, once you go online, you hear about digital footprint all the time.
It's forever. It'll never go away.
No matter how you press delete, there's no such thing. Right? It's there somewhere in the background. I also was listening to radio yesterday when I heard somebody was calling a program to say that he went to the embassy to get a visa and they asked for his social media accounts. So as you interact with the technology, you have to be very careful, be very responsible about what you put on, the conversations you engage in, and just be very social, be sociable, do things that your parents would be proud of. If there's anything that you're doing that you don't want your parents to know, perhaps you should not be involved
in it. Have that little voice in the back of your head, like, look, man, maybe this isn't such a great idea.
Because you're not only embarrassing yourself, you're embarrassing your family as well.
All right, I guess. All right, I think we've covered a fair amount here. I'm going to just give the last word to you in terms of the last couple of things to be mindful of as we, not necessarily, I guess, beyond just back to school, but as we begin this academic year and to keep in mind as parents and children as we go through.
Well, I just want to end it on a positive high note. This is an awesome term, an awesome time. It is the longest term. I think there's just one interruption there in October. So you want to make the best use of it. The technology can be used to your advantage. There are many apps out there that help children to be better organized, their homework apps and so on. So get those apps and use them to organize yourselves. Find out as much as you can about the school that you're going into. Find out as much as you can about the expectations of the teachers. Find out as much as you can about co-curricular activities that you could be involved in. And look to see what aligns to your interests and your own ambitions. And just to go in with a positive attitude. And for parents, listen to your children. Support them. Help them to navigate the challenges. You're going to need a listening ear. It's a part of what parents are supposed to do. Listen not with a view to punish, but with a view to guide. Because really that's what discipline is. And children, also remember that even though you might have anxieties, tell yourself that other persons have gone through it too. And if they've gone through it, then you can go through it too. And just have yourselves a really good first term. Take it one term at a time. Don't take on the entire year. Take it one term at a time. Be open to the new environment, the friends you're going to meet, the new teachers you're going to have. Feel inspired. Go out there confidently with a positive attitude. And good things will happen. I have all faith. I'm a believer.
All right, great. So if you want to get more information about the National Parenting Support Commission, you can contact them at 876-967-7799. You can also look for them on social media. They're on Facebook, National Parenting Support Commission, on Twitter at NPSCJA, and on Instagram at NPSC Jamaica. So you can find them, keep up with them, follow all the activities that they're involved in, and you can reach out to them to get information, get a little advice if you might feel like you need it, and so on. So they're there. They're a resource that's very readily available to parents and children so that you can benefit, right? All right, so I think it's time for us to wrap. Thank you to everyone who tuned into our discussion, especially those of you who sent in your questions and your comments. Thank you very, very much. We really do appreciate them. And if you have a question and if you sent it and we didn't get to answer it in our discussion, not to worry. We'll be going through afterwards and we'll be able to channel them to Miss Carr, and maybe she'll reach out to you and give you the answers that you need. Remember, our audience plays a major part in our show. So if there's anyone in particular you'd like us to have in studio, let us know. And we'll try as best as possible to have that person in studio very quickly. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, on Twitter, and Instagram at Jamaica Information Service to see who will be in studio next. We do this every Thursday live on Facebook. I've been your host, Vaughn Davis, and this has been Studio 58A Live. Thank you again for joining us, and please have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Vaughn. Thank you.